I think I'll read just a little bit out of one of the Adventure Is books by Dwayne Hepner. It goes by Dwayne, the Great Writer. The books are available at lulu.com. And this is from Your Dream Visions. For those who are the new students and new leaders, they have a great education that is always taking place, whether they fully realize this or not. The human self will always be the last to know. And so one of the best things to practice is great patience with oneself. As we continue to practice being now, we eventually see beyond what the eyes and mind are always observing. Then, at some point, we have arrived and we are more than comfortable with ourselves because we are being now. Being now is the best real position to be with, but we also need the real guidance and the ongoing real education because there is no end to what is possible. Even though what we see in front of us will soon be gone, but all the people we know and do not know will always be somewhere. And they will be where they have the right to decide to be. So, all is cool now. When the real guides come into our lives, they lead us past our desires and creations into the fluidness of the all-light universes of real freedom. In the meantime, while we are here, it is best to pay attention to the nightly lessons. If a person is not a new student, then they should start up immediately and take the true completeness course so they will not have to return here again unaware. So this guidance that's being offered is also a warning that unless a person, when given the opportunity, when you get to hear these words being shared, that if you do not pay attention and test it for yourself, this new you song, and read the new books, this world is in the process of becoming totally controlled by authoritarians that are brutalitarians, that the vast majority of mankind has been convinced or there's some superior being or something that's controlling all kinds of stuff going on. But what's really happening is that we're being used as slaves on a prison planet. And that if we have to return here in what's called reincarnate in a physical body, again, it's going to be in worse conditions than it has ever been physically. And not only that, the authoritarians, these brutalitarians, or reptilians, whatever you want to call them, are making it so that people that in the physical bodies, the souls in the physical bodies that aren't aware of what's real, will be robotized and just used continuously because they are advanced enough to keep the physical body in physical health to be used by them, even though they convince the human minds that that they have some kind of freedom here, which is just actually not true, that it's an implied freedom instead of real freedom. So what's really being offered, shared, is how to not have to return, have gone through our experiences enough that the real guides see that it's time to have the opportunity to earn our way out of this psych realm stuff with this physical and astral and causal and mental and etheric bodies through a deep dark border, which is like a shell around creation, to get into real universes where there's real freedom and what's called real love, not just this emotional stuff that we think is love on earth. So if you're hearing these words being shared by us involved in this new presentation, it's your decision to pay attention or not. Find out for yourself what it's all about. Because that's what right now is putting out the effort to share. And it's actually an attempt by sharing to earn our way out of these psych realms into the real universes, because as beings of real light, not these vehicles, these mental and physical and astral and causal and etheric bodies, we're going to be around forever. And how is it that we want to be forever? So I just thought that I'd let everybody have a chance. If anybody else has anything they'd like to mention, in case somebody listens to this, that the real guides have presented it to them, because it sounds like there are no coincidences. If a person gets to hear about the new presentation for the first time, I was not trying to convince you to do anything, but it's a warning. If you don't pay attention, then you're probably just going to have to keep coming back until you're to the point through your lessons in this psych realm stuff that you do pay attention. And we don't even know if the opportunity is going to be available in future reincarnated lives. So this is very important stuff about a person's life and how they want to be, instead of being used as a slave for what seems like it could be forever, or at least till the end of this, whatever you want to call it, Iron Age or the last Yuga, or until things change in these millions and millions of years that we call time, and in this stuff we call space. Is there anybody else that would like to mention anything today?
Hi, Tim. Thanks.
Hi,
there's part of it
go ahead.
That's really, you probably are not going to understand it, and that's okay. Just if you keep going with it, the awareness will seep in. The recognition will seep in through the resistance that you bring it and that others, have set up for yourself. So if you don't understand what we're talking about, it's okay. It's not for the personal self, really, it's very difficult for it to pick up, because we're talking about something far beyond that, the real awareness or real self. So the personal self is kind of duh. It thinks it knows things. It thinks it's smart. It's created a position for itself here. But it can be so much more for people if they just try to get that there's more to themselves than their personal self, and not necessarily try to understand anything at one time right away, because it's a process you go through. It's not something you're going to pick up immediately. It's too big. It's too huge. There's life is big, and you got to kind of see that it's far too big for the personal self to take in. So have patience with yourself, like you read there, and take your time with it, because it's not something you're gonna get overnight. And thank you.
Yeah. Thanks again, Val. Is there anybody else who would like to mention anything else?
Yeah, this is Bob. I'd like to throw something out there for maybe, and just in case there might be somebody that believes in Jesus, is that we're full of it and Jesus is the only way. I would like to remind people that what we're doing in the New You presentation is we're a group of people that has what the Bible would call spiritual eyes to see and spiritual ears to hear. Now, there's a great example in the Bible that happened at Pentecost. It's in the New Testament. You can read about it. And a lot of people overlook it. They don't understand it. But I'll try to make it real short and brief. There was a time when Peter stood up to speak to a huge crowd of people. And there were thousands of people in this crowd, and they were from all parts of the earth. You had Egyptians, Greeks, Babylonians, probably a half a dozen different languages, China and whatnot, and they were all listening to Peter get up and speak. And he was talking about Bible stuff, which I don't want to go into, but the key is the people that were in attendance had an experience of what I would call where they had eyes to see and ears to hear. And what they saw was when Peter and the other speakers got up to speak on the platform, all of a sudden they could see a crown over the head of the speaker. Now, it wasn't physical, and it wasn't a normal type of crown, but everybody in the audience could see the crown over the speaker, whatever kind of crown it was. And the part about having ears to hear was what was very interesting is when Peter got up to speak, everybody in the crowd, all these people had their different native languages, like the Greeks had their native language, and the Babylonians had their native language, and the Romans had their Latin and whatever language it was. And what was interesting is when the speaker got up to speak, everybody heard the speaker speak as if it was in their own language. So if you were Greek listening to the speaker, you would hear what he was saying in Greek. If you were Roman, you would hear it in Latin or whatever language they used in Rome. If you were from Babylonia, you would hear it in Babylon. If you were from China, you would hear it in Chinese. And what was so astounding, like there might be a Greek guy standing next to an Egyptian, and he turned to him and said, well, let me tell you what he's saying. And the guy next to him said, no, shut up, because I hear him in my own language. Everybody heard the speech in their own language. And that is a great example of having spiritual ears to hear. And in the new presentation, we're trying to make people aware that unless you have spiritual eyes to see things like this, and you have spiritual ears for understanding, you have not evolved quite as far as maybe you thought you have. And although we do not espouse the Bible per se, we do say that Jesus was taught by a real guide. He was in the Katsiperi Monastery over in Tibet, and he was taught for 2 years by a real guide, and everything that he was taught by the real guides, he took back to the Middle East and tried to teach people, but then the story goes that they murdered him because nobody wanted to hear the truth. Well, that's kind of what we're facing. We're trying to teach people what the real guides say, exactly the same what Jesus was taught, but since it is so different than Christianity, it's so different than the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament Bible, it's for most Christians what we're saying is anathema. They just do not want to hear it. But we're teaching the same thing that Jesus was taught. And so I would just ask everybody to bear with us and sing New You, and try to find out for yourself what exactly did the real guides teach Jesus. Because I can guarantee you, when you go to Sunday sermons, you are not getting the word that Jesus was taught. You're getting something entirely different. Okay, so that's all I have to say on that point. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, thanks. I'll read a little bit more of some definitions by Dwayne Hepner, Dwayne the Great Writer, who is what's called a universal guide. Here we have in the physical that are presenting, that is presenting books with Ava, that has been to this place called the Real Universes, and has actually come back into the physical to present this to those that are ready. So I'll give a definition he has wrote in one of the Adventurous series books, again, Your Dream Visions, the NuPresentation. This is the all-encompassing true completeness provided as a real service by the new man for those humans who are ready for the greatest adventure of their life. Real freedom, guaranteed. Now, real freedom, the definition that he's wrote here in this book is, this is the position of all the real universal guides that they have with the true reality, and they are making this opportunity available right now to others. The real guides take over the karma of their new students from the lords of karma and make sure it is worked off in this lifetime. This word karma is what's called cause and effect. It's just makes sense that when you touch your finger to something hot, you realize it burns you. So it makes sense not to touch your flesh to something that's too hot. So that's what's being presented, things that make sense, so that we can find out what is true. And that's what we need is guidance, and we need a real education, not the stuff that we've been brought up with that's being presented by these authoritarians to keep us dumbed down and not really know what's really going on. In fact, I'll read another little piece about the three-headed God. First off is the benevolent head, which is the one most seen by the public. It shows itself as humble and caring and bestows a supposed concern for all, while in the unseen background lurks the two other supporting heads. The hard head, known as the evil one or the serpent. This head comes out when people need to be intimidated into believing in it and what it is deciding. Then, as it has its say, the benevolent head once again returns to the surface to continue the daily politics. The influential head is the most devious and cunning of the two and actually rules them. It never really shows itself in the same manner as the two others, but is always present as it binds those who are in agreement to its influences. All these religions of the earth have been created by reptilians to control people, to make rules and regulations that keep people under their control. It isn't real freedom. We don't need any authoritarians to tell us how to be and to live. So that's kind of what's being offered, is the way to get back to our real freedom, where there are no authoritarians. And all these lessons, I guess, are necessary that we have to experience here in this creation to have a comparison to what isn't real compared to what is real. And it's hard to think that this is all an illusion, something that was created but out of nothing. And then we think that it's something,